Okay, pardon my dogs. I am going to attempt to do a tutorial for beginners on how I do my earrings and where to start to make it the easiest, what materials to use, and go from there. So this is the pattern I'm going to do today. It's one of my earring patterns. I also want to show the difference between this pattern and some of the other patterns that are actually like this. So you'll know the difference. These you're going to work from the middle here this way and go to the side and to the other side. Now if you get one of these patterns, you're going to go from the middle here, work down, and then work up. So I just want to clarify there's actually kind of two different kinds here, depending on the orientation of your work. Okay. So, some people use this graft, which is how I use what I do. I use this graft instead of the word chart. I find it much easier. I'll show you why I find it much easier. I'm going to have to move the camera around a little bit, but the reason I find it much easier is because of this setup that I've kind of made for myself. It's just a kind of a typing stand here that's metal, and I've got some pardon the dogs again. I've got some magnets to hold the sheet of paper, and then I also have this thing that I've made, which is also I've got magnetized, and it kind of runs up and down this like this, and it is made with a little graph that I created from my program, and I've blocked out certain squares and left certain squares open, so that as I'm working, I just move this down to the next two rows, and then move it down to the next two rows, and then move it down to the next two rows. It seems to me to be the quickest way to go through a pattern. So that is why I use the graft instead of the word chart. I just find it easier to do that way, and without too much trouble you can kind of set up one of these little devices. This I made, this little clear thing I made, and if any of you are interested in a piece of this, I can actually send you a PDF of this, and you can print it off of some clear printing plastic. I'm not really sure what it's called. I'll have to find that out. But anyway, I can get this to you if you want this, so you can create this for yourself. So that's how I. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit closer here so you can see what I'm doing. And reposition my camera to where I had it. Okay, so the other materials that you will need are Fireline. If you don't use Fireline, you might use something else. This is what I prefer. It's really thin, really strong, and pretty much invisible in your end work. Been using this for many years. Fireline. Get it obviously from Beadsmith. Just pretty much any beading store I think will have it, and of course you can get it on the web. The other thing that I use is something called a quick start card. for peyote. And pretty much this is a must-have for me. It just makes your first few rows just so much easier. And of course, if you've never seen one of these, I'll show you how that works. And of course the board, and I've got the beads over here. The pattern I am choosing for today is just a simple 2-color pattern. The other thing I have here is a little piece of plastic that I've created to put your excess string on, and I'll show you how I set that up too. So let me start by getting my string here, my wire line, and I know you probably can't see that very well on the camera, but what you want to do is add a bead and then go through it again. And I do this without the needle, you just need really good glasses. Okay, and so I'm gonna position this bead in the middle of my string, which is about 4 foot long. So I get a 4 foot long piece of fire line and position this bead right in the middle. Trying to do this so I'm not outside the camera, but it's a little hard to do. Okay, so this is about center of that. Now the reason I do that is that so I can make my earring with 1 piece of fire line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that piece of fire line and I'm going to wrap it around my little piece of plastic, kind of a, looks like a bobbin shaped piece of plastic with a little bitty slit right there. So I can put all the excess up to where that bead is on this thing till I get it to just about where the bead is. And then I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to set that right in the between that card. Pull that out that way, and then I have one of these clever little things here. You can also use a paper clip to do this, but you just want to secure that piece of plastic in there. Okay, so now you've got your extra for the second half kind of stowed away there. And now I'm going to add my needle here. Okay. Okay. And now what you want to do with this card is you want to go in between here and up this first hole that's kind of off to the side. Let me see. Okay, there we go. You can see where that is. Okay, and then you're just going to pull it out until you've kind of tightened it up against that bead. Now the next thing you see on this is this little bitty hole that's right at the crease, and you're going to put your needle right through there and then bring it out this first larger hole. Okay, oops, and every once in a while you'll flip your work off to the side. I'm going to get my beads out here because I don't have any of these out. Okay, so now I'm looking at my pattern, and the first thing I need is an A and 3 B's. And of course I have this, in case you want to know what that little plastic thing is for, that's a clever invention of my own. It's just a bead tube that I've cut at an angle, but it really is great for picking these beads up off of this board. Okay. So, and I've also got A and B marked here, and C. That's just if I have a bunch of colors, but try to put it in order so I don't get confused. It's not too hard when you're working with just 2 colors, but if you've got several colors, I've got these marked at A, B, C, D, E, just places that I put my colors. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up my first bead. Okay, I'm trying to stay in the camera shot here. And I'm gonna have to pause for just a moment. Okay, so now I'm back. My mother was at the door, and so I had to stop. Okay, so what I kind of forgot to mention was that I'm going to start now with row 27. So this is the row that I'm starting with. This row just above the center row, because I want to start with these 2 rows here. And so if you're working with the bead chart, this would be row 27. So you have to figure out which is the beginning or the first of these 2 outermost rows. So I'm starting with row 27. So, okay, let me do that. Okay, so, so you're gonna go in that first and out the second here, and your bead is gonna just fit very nicely in that slot. And then I'm gonna go just keep doing the same thing until I've finished the first row here. I also have a tendency to kind of wrap this down and pull it when I'm coming back with my bead to do this, just to get the string out of the way. So you'll see me do that, and that just kind of just keep everything a little less tangled. And you will get this fire line tangled. So I tend to go a little slower, because I hate tangles. Okay, so now I'm at the end here. Now, when I get to the end of this, I usually take, I've got some odd colored beads up here. You don't have to do this. In the instructions, you would just go down through this bead and add your second row. But I've noticed that when I do that, it really tends to kind of tear these cards up sooner. And these cards, you can use them over and over and over again. But this little section here gets torn up because this gets pulled on it. So what I do is I add an off-colored bead right there. It's okay, it'll come out later, but it just keeps that from pulling right on that piece of the card. So I think it just keeps your card to last longer. It just helps your card to last longer. So, okay, now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to move my pattern down so I can see what to do next. And I need to start with a couple of bees. Okay, so this is the last of that row. Okay. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to go do the next row. Just bear with me. I know this can get a little boring. But once we get started, we'll just kind of skip ahead. But these first few rows are a little bit more challenging because your work is so small, and then you have to do the end up here a little bit differently, and I'll show you that than you do when you get further down into your work. That looks like I picked up 2 there, so I'm just gonna fix that. Okay, so now I'm at the last bead for this row, and I want to completely ignore this off-colored bead. I want to pretend it's not there. Don't run anything through it. If you do, it just gets wrapped up in your work, and you pretty much have to start from scratch. So I'm going to ignore it. It's not really there. I'm not going to pay any attention to it. So I've picked up a bead, and I'm going to now go through this bead. This first black bead. Let me see if I can get it closer on the camera. Okay. And now this is going to, get it wrapped around here. This is going to just pop down next to it. Okay. So now you have that last bead in that row is now where it needs to be. Now, in order to start the next row, you need to be coming out of this bead right here, that one you just went through. You need to have your bead coming out, your string coming out through there. So we have to work around until we get it that way. In order to do that, you have to go through these 2 beads, and back up these 3. Now, if it feels tight, just go through 2 and then go through the other. This doesn't, I don't tend to work real tight on my beading, so I have plenty of room here. Just make sure you don't get hooked up in the paper, that you're not picking up any of that card. And then I'm going to pull this through here like that. Okay? So now, as you can see, I'm coming through this way right here. Coming through with my, so now I can go back down this bead and be ready to start my next row. Again, just completely ignoring that off-colored bead. I'll flip it over and do the next row. Okay. apparently there's something bark-worthy out there. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the last bead for this row. And in order to start my next row, I need to be coming through this bead here. Hope you can see that, this bead here. So, in order to do that, I need to work my way around. And once we get past these first few rows, this will get a little bit easier, but until we get past this, we have to kind of work a little bit different than normal. So in this first one here, now I'm going to go straight down these two here. Up these two here. And now down that one. Now that puts me in the right spot to start my next row. I'll flip it over. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna start on the next row here. Okay, so now I am at the end of this row here, and okay, so I need, in order to start my next row, okay, I need to flip over my card. Okay. Okay, at the end of this row now, we're going to add the last bead. I'm going to come right down these two beads, right here. You can see that. Ouch. Just gonna flip this. Sometimes you have to flip that over. And then you're gonna go up these 2 beads. Okay. And then down this bead, and you'll be ready to start your next row because you're decreasing again. So every 2 rows we are decreasing. Okay. So check to, I always try to check to make sure there's nothing really obviously off with my pattern, because you don't want to get way down at the end and find out that you've messed up your pattern. Okay. Now to start your next row, you need to come through this bead. So we need to figure out how to get this string over to that spot. So I'm gonna come down these 2 here. Up this one. That's the one right next to it on the right. And then you can go down this bead so that you're in the right position to start your next one. Flip it over. Okay, and just flip this over and start the next row. Because we're not decreasing on this one, so we're setting that bead right next to the other one. A. Okay. these two here. Ow! It's the second time I've done that. Make sure that gets popped over to the right spot. Up these two. And then I can go in here again to start my next row. Okay, so if you notice that I pause sometimes and stare at my work, it's because I'm checking to make sure that I haven't messed anything up. So long pauses just mean that I'm checking my work. The other thing is that I do is I tend to kind of, roll the beads to kind of get them set in place. Now, you'll also notice that when you're working with this fire line that you can almost feel it pop into place, which means it is popping into the space between the beads. So you really shouldn't see any of the fire line other than just right here at the edges. So it just seems to be a really good thread to work with, and very, very strong, and I've never used anything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this off until the end. You've pretty much got an idea of how to get going. And once I get to the end and I'm going to start on the other end, then I'll show you how I do that. So I'm just going to go all the way to the end. When I get to the very end, then I'll start up again with the video. Okay, so now I'm getting down here to the end. Just have a few more rows to go. Okay, now, as you can see, when I want to put my next row in, I'm going to want to come down this bead, so I have to work my way over to it. And I'm going to go down these two beads here. Up this bead to the right. And down this bead here so that I can start my next row. Flip it over. Okay. Now the next row, I don't need to do anything fancy because that next bead is going to sit right there. So all I have to do is flip it over. Okay, on this one, I want this bead to sit right here next to this one. So I'm gonna go down these two beads here. Gonna make sure it flips over. Same thing, the next row is going to go right in here, so I need to move my string over so that I can get to that spot. So basically you're just weaving over to the right position for the next row. And flipping it over. Okay. I need to get my needle to be able, I need to put the next bead in this way. So I need to get over there. So I'm gonna go down these two beads here. And up this one right here. and down this one right here. So I can put this bead on. And although that kind of looks like it ought to be the last bead, it's not. I still have 2 more rows to go. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, although you're getting right down to just a few rows here. Go right through here. Okay. Make sure that thing gets flipped over to the right spot. Back up here. And now I'm ready to put my last bead on for this side. Okay. Okay. Last bead. Okay. So now I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to, I never tie knots in my fire line. I weave it in or weave it out. If I need a new piece, if I'm doing a bigger piece and I need a new piece, I'll weave to the end the old piece and weave in a new piece. I don't ever tie knots. Fire line is impossible to tie knots into. So it works just so much better this way anyway. So I'm just going to go up and down, right down the center of this, all the way up, about probably 10 or 12 beads to tie off, or to weave off, whatever you want to call it, because you're not really actually tying anything. Okay, so the next thing you want to do once you feel like you've tied it off, and trust me, there is no way that's coming out, okay? So you don't have to worry about it ever coming out. The next thing you want to do is, let me see where my little device is. Get it up here. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is called the thread zapper. When you're working with fire line, the other thing you have to know about fire line is that it's impossible to cut with it with a scissor. It just doesn't work. You either cut it with surgical steel, which I have here, or you burn it off with a thread zapper. So when I get to this point, I'm going to have to use a thread zapper because trying to get that steel blade in there is pretty impossible. So I just get my thread zapper right down as close as I can to my beads and pop it off. And now we're done with one side. Okay? Now we can get rid of the card. So take this out here. I'm going to unwind this extra that I have here. Get rid of my little plastic bobbin or whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, I'm going to open this card up in the back side. I'm going to take this little bead that was the very first bead we put on, that we put in the middle of the string. And I'm going to take that off completely. Okay? Now, I'm going to flip it over this way. And you can take this bead here, okay, pull on it a little bit, and pull it off. And that disengages you from the card. Okay, it's that simple. As long as you've not wrapped your thread around that off-colored bead. So now we're ready to start on this second half. You don't need a card. You just need your work. So I am going to thread the needle here. Okay. All right. Okay, so in order to start my next row, I need my string, I need my needle to be going that way. So I need to weave it over there, because you can't just go right back through there. That string is coming out of that hole. You need the string not to be coming out of that hole. You need the string to be coming out of this hole. So there's only one way you can get that over there, and you have to put your needle through both of these, pull it through, and then go up these two. That feels a little tight to me, and I don't want to mess up my work, so I'm just going to do it one at a time, which is perfectly fine. Also, if you force a needle through these beads, depending on how many times you've gone through it with your string, you can pop one. It doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. So now I'm in a position to be able to put that through there so that I can start my next row. Okay? So let me just go through the next row real quick. Okay, so now we're up at the top here. And it's the same kind of thing. I can't get there from here. Hush, hush. So I'm going to go through these two beads here. Ow, I keep doing that. And up through this first bead only. Okay, and now I can go down through this bead to start my next row. So basically when it comes to weaving around to start your next row, you just need to figure out, okay, this is how I need to go to start my next row. How do I weave around to get there? I'm sure there's more than one way to do it. But it's just a matter of getting this in the right place to start your next row. And if you're doing straight work, like a straight bracelets, it's fairly simple to tell you how to do this. But since we're also decreasing every other row, it becomes a little bit more complicated than just a regular turnaround. So now I'm just gonna do the next row here. Okay, I keep doing that too. Okay, so now I'm ready to start my next row. However, there again, my next bead is going to be sitting right there, so my string is coming out at the right place. Okay? I just need to add a bead, and it'll sit right where it's supposed to sit. Okay, that's the wrong color. Okay, last bead of the row. I need to go down these two. Make sure that pop that over to the right position, and up these two, down that one, so that I'm in position to do my next row. Okay, I got a low battery indication on my phone, so I may have to pause it here for a second. Let me see if I can get through this row here. Okay, we're gonna finish this video here. I am getting ready to pick up the last bead for this row. Go down through these two beads here. Now I need to go up through this bead just to the right. Like that. And down through this bead right here. And now I can flip it over and do the next row. I'm gonna go ahead and pause it right now, finish down to the very bottom right before you start the hole for the ear wire, and then I'll start the video again. Okay, I have managed to get down to pretty much the very end. I just want to go over how we make the hole for the ear wire. Okay. Just gonna finish this row here. Okay, now this is where we make the hole for the ear wire. And normally you would, if you're just doing a regular row, you would go down here, add a bead, but I'm gonna skip this bead. That's where my hole is gonna be. So I'm gonna go down 2 of these beads, this one and this one. See? Okay. And then I'm gonna go through this one here. Okay, now I'm going to put 3 beads on my needle. Okay, and then I'm going to go this. So I'm making a loop. Okay, going from here all the way around and putting that right back in those first 2 beads again. Okay, and that's just going to set like that. Okay. Now I want to hook this bead to this bead. This is where I'm coming out of. Oh, actually I'm not yet, but I will soon. I just came out of that white bead, so I'm going to go through this black bead. Okay, so now I'm at the end of that row. Now I want to hook this bead to this bead, so I'm going to go through here. Oh. Let me try that again. Go through here, okay, and then I'm going to go back through this bead, so that hooks the opposite side of that bead, so it lays flat like that. Okay, so now we're going to go all 3 of these beads, and we're going to do the same thing for this bead here. We're going to hook this side of this bead to this bead by going through just this bead and then back through this bead and that kind of cements that down. So you kind of get the idea that we've made this hole here. And now I'm going to just finish it off just like I did the other side. Okay, I'm gonna have to re-thread my needle because I pulled it out. And there's paint on my hands because I'm painting my kitchen cabinet, so I thought I had all the paint off my hands, but I don't, so that's that explanation. So again, just, you know, up 8 or 10 beads. Okay. And then I'm gonna zap it off. I think I didn't quite get down to the end on that. But I'm just gonna burn it until it's off. There we go. Okay. Now I am going to show you how I put the ear wire on. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I had to find an ear wire. I'm gonna just take this ear wire off of one of my other earrings just to demonstrate how to put the ear wires on. And when you're doing an ear wire, and you may already know this, you always bend it off to the side. You never open that hoop out. You always just bend it off to the side. So the ear wires that I use are this shape, and I get them from Fire Mountain. And they're about the only ones I can find that have a big enough hole here to accommodate that hole in my earrings. And so just put that on there like so. And then you're done. And I hope you enjoyed this video. It's my first tutorial. Maybe a little rough, but you can critique me if you like. I'm gonna now have to do some editing, I'm sure, before I can get it up on the web. So thank you very much.